and he's going to get started in about 2 minutes. So it's wonderful to see everyone here with us. I know people are going to be jumping on fast and furious here. And so it's great to have everyone with us. Yes. So why don't you just type in the chat where you're zooming in from. We're happy to have you. Yes, very good. It's great to see everyone. Michael's in the distillery. He's in the bottom. Hi,
Hi, Cherie. Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Hi. Hello. And we're zooming this on Facebook as well. Oh, goodness. Christina's here from Germany. Very good. Yes. Guten Abend. Wonderful. Okay. Well, we have the great, distinct, exciting privilege to have Michael with us. And I've been hoping to have this day happen for a really long time. And I'm so glad he said yes. And so for those of you who are just joining, my name is Cherie Ross, and I'm privileged to be a Royal Crown Diamond Leader with Young Living. And we have the great distinct honor of having the absolutely magnificent Michael Carter with us today. And Michael is our manager of our Highlands Flats reforestation project, farm, distillery, and everything else we have going on up there. And so, oops, I have a little notification all of a sudden. Nick, how do I stop this? There we go. It stopped. Okay, good. Cool. iPhone update. Don't know how this all works, but I just got a little beepy. Alrighty. So, hey, Janie. Hi. It's nice to see people. I see names, but it's really nice to see faces. It's wonderful. Hi, Mary. Good morning. Okay. So we are going to get started. We are on the hour. So how did this all come about? Well, we were recently in September at a kind of a launch of a new training series with Young Living. And this is the Raindrop training. And Michael did a phenomenal presentation that was so exquisite. I literally could not contain myself. And I literally watched myself catapult and jump out of my seat like a volcano. I just started, because what he has to share with us is extraordinary. And I'm going to use some words, and hopefully you can feel the emotion. What we are doing in Young Living is far beyond anything, anywhere, in the world regarding how we're caring, not only for our plants and our trees, not only for our soil, not only for our air and our atmosphere, but also our communities and our environment. So we have truly decades ahead of anyone else what we're doing. And I know that Mary had directed everyone to watch something called Kiss the Ground. And it's a documentary, and it's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, it's called Kiss the Ground. It's about an hour, maybe, right in there. I'd highly recommend that you take the time and watch it, and not just have it running in the background while you're flipping on your phones, or while you're running through emails, or while you're doing laundry, cleaning dishes, whatever. Literally make an appointment with yourself, undisturbed. And it's something really good to have your family watch. It truly is awakening for where we are headed and what is possible for us in our world. And when we use our oils, you can feel them. You can really feel them, especially if you're not distracted with a lot of things going on around you. And what this will share and really reveal to you is how we are ahead of this curve, how we've been doing this for a long time, how this is something that Gary himself knew to be factual and true, and how it is being carried out on all of our farms around the world. And this is a passion of Michael's. And so I'm going to let Michael take it away, and we're going to kind of dovetail back and forth. Michael's going to share what we're doing, and then I'm going to share a little bit about the impact that it has on our oils and us and how it works. People always say when we're at the farm, and Michael can attest to this, and they're up at Highland Flats, and they ask the scientists, whenever classes or people come, well, what's the one thing that makes Young Living different? And there's one word answer. It's a one word answer: everything. It's everything. And so we are going to be learning today about a tiny little piece of what makes up our everything. And so it is my distinct honor and privilege, and I'm quite emotional because I've been waiting for this day for a really long time, to bring you all the amazing, wonderful, magnificent Michael Carter. So Michael, if you'd like to, you're unmuted and I'll mute, and if you'd like to share how you started with Young Living, and then he has a presentation that is second to none.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cherie. I really appreciate that introduction and really enjoy seeing everyone who's been to our farm. Hi, Terry. Hi, Darlene. It's just really nice to see family on this on this Zoom. So I'll get started. I've been with Young Living for 7 years at Highland Flats the entire time. I started here as the office manager in 2014. The end of 2014. And that was kind of funny because we didn't really have an office. It was more like a table and a couple of folders. We didn't even have phone lines at the time. So we've come a long way since 2014, when our distillery actually came online. Since then, I advanced to assistant manager, and then 2 years ago, took over the manager position from Brett Packer, who's now overseeing all of our farms. And it's really, hopefully I can do it justice, this amazing place that I get to visit every day and work and produce oils that get sent all over the world to millions of people. It's really an amazing opportunity. I will start sharing my screen and we can go from there.
For those who are just joining us, Michael is zooming in from the distillery in Highland Flats, which is Highland Flats, which is just a little bit on the west side of Naples in northern Idaho.
Yes, and Gary and Mary are the ones who put Naples, Idaho on the map. It's the reason when you hear Naples, you no longer think of Florida, you only think of Idaho, which is pretty amazing. This aerial shot of our farm we took in 2018, and it was a pretty magical day in January, covered in snow, and Jesse and I ran out, each of us with one of the drones, to try and capture this view of our farm and this sunrise in the winter. And I feel like it captures a lot of the magic of this farm and this place in North Idaho, and all of the forest that surround us, and the 6,000-foot mountains. And you can see all of the trees that we've planted over the years in the foreground. You can see our large wood chip pile there as well that we spread onto the fields, which I'll get to in a bit. But this is Highland Flats, 3 miles due west of Naples, Idaho. Feel really privileged to work with such an amazing crew. This is our team here: Raya, Gabby, Trigva, Jared, Todd, Riker, John, Todd, myself, Sabrina, Ramito, Silvina, Mario, and Brett. Just an amazing group of people, and everyone here just really pours their heart into the products that we produce. We have three main conifer oils that we produce, and they go into over 50 different Young Living products. And so there's a lot of hands and a lot of energy and creativity and passion that goes into the oil before it even reaches Utah. I want to go way back to kind of tie some things together about what makes Young Living such an amazing organization and family with such a storied history. This picture is Gary in France learning the art of distillation. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner of the picture, you'll see a toddler in a backpack. And that's actually our current French farm manager, Nicholas Landell. And he's obviously been learning the art of distillation and lavender cultivation since he was born. And each Young Living farm has a unique history and growth and legacy that grew out of, becoming a part of this organization. And it goes way back and ties everything together. Before Young Living, Gary was sharing his essential oils at truck stops and diners. And I find this pretty amazing because I know that all of you do a lot of hard work and have a lot of support in sharing these products. And if you can imagine back in the 80s and 90s, trying to share them at truck stops and diners before anyone had ever heard of essential oils, much less herbs or natural health. Just a whole lot of dedication and passion went into getting us to where we are. And it's pretty miraculous, and it's amazing to continue that and see how far we've come and just appreciate all of the sacrifices that were made in order to get us here. Young Living's first farm, St. Mary's. You've seen some videos of Gary down there discussing distillery operations. But St. Mary's from 1994 to 98 was growing all of our herbs and distilling essential oil down there. And it wasn't until 1998 that Gary and Mary brought online the Idaho balsam fir. It was on a trip up to Naples, Idaho, that they came upon a Christmas tree farm that was overgrown and in the process of being abandoned. So if the Christmas trees are not sold in a timely fashion, then they get overgrown and it gets really expensive to transition that land into something else for a different type of agriculture. So Gary and Mary found a field of trees that were being bulldozed. And at that moment, Gary decided that he was going to distill essential oils from those trees. And that started our whole journey, was these Christmas trees that were basically just being abandoned because no one saw value there. And there's a really nice metaphor there, because this Christmas tree farm, you imagine how many thousands of people drove by it and said, you couldn't pay me to take that because it would cost more money than it's worth just to make it usable. And yet, after a certain amount of time, there's a huge amount of value there, and a product and a gift that can be shared around the world. So our farm transitioned from this overlooked, overgrown plantation to thriving, vibrant, visitors from all over the world, product sent all over the world enterprise. And it's a pretty amazing story, but it all started with a pile of Christmas trees that nobody wanted. These are the three species that we mainly focus on here at Highland Flats: the grand fir on the left, the concolor fir in the middle, and the blue spruce on the right. And this is about 95% of what we do. This year, we're really excited because we started distilling evergreen essence, and that has other species that we were really enthusiastic to get into some oil and get down and out to all of the Young Living members, because our 3 trees here that we do are really amazing, but there are so many other species and trees that grow naturally in the forest. Cherie's got a bottle of evergreen essence there. And yes, there were 12 species in that blend. 2 of them came down from Northern Lights, and the other 10 we produced here at our farm at Highland Flats. And so it was really exciting, and this will be the first year of evergreen being produced here, and we're going to do that moving forward every year from now on.
So Michael, I want to interject here real quick. This bottle of evergreen essence, y'all, this is the one that this is the first of the new winter, let's see, fall winter 2021-2022 harvest batch. And this is really exciting because, for those of you who don't know, evergreen essence changes its formula every year. Every year it's not the same. It's the only oil that we have that every year it's a different formula. And this one is specifically and particularly special. And so when it will come available in a 15 ml very, very soon. So the very next time you see it available from Young Living Corporate, it is the new formula in a 15 ml the very next time. I hope you all are understanding what I'm saying. So the next time you see from a Young Living Corporate the evergreen essence in a 15 ml, it's going to be this amazing new formula. And I might add, Michael, did you all mix it up there? Did you do the mixing up there? Or did the mixing get done down in Utah?
No, we did the mixing here, and it was actually a mixer that Gary had fabricated down in Mona, and has been here since our distillery was built. And it's in one of the pictures here, and you'll see it. But we mixed all of the oil here and then sent it all down to Utah.
So the order that you mix oils in matters huge. People who say, oh, I just give me the oils that are in it and I'll make my own. No, not even close. The order that you put the oils in and how you work with each oil is huge for the outcome of what we have in our bottles. And I can tell you, these are 2 oils now that I carry with me at all times. The very first oil that I had an emotional response to was Sacred Mountain. The second oil that I had a deep emotional response to was Believe. The third oil that I had a deeply, deeply spiritual, emotional response to was this one, Sacred Frankincense. Phenomenal. And since 2010, personally, I haven't really had that deep, moved me to a whole nother level experience. I mean, our oils are amazing and I love them. But we're talking completely into a whole new galaxy. The first time I smelled evergreen essence, I literally had a response like I haven't had since I got the first liter of this shipped to me. This oil, personally, and now this is not science talking, this is Cherie personally talking. I think this oil is going to have a higher frequency than even our black spruce. And this oil, when you get it, I'm going to invite all of you to do something. When you get it, don't just open it, smell it, put it down, and go through the rest of your stuff in your box. No. Treat this like something very sacred and very special. I would like you to, if you can, if it's not snow outside, but if you can, put everything down, put your phones down, everything down. Go outside, stand on the ground, stand on the ground, open this bottle quietly without talking and distraction, inhale it, smell it, and be present with it. And experience the shift that is possible for you in this amazing little bottle of oil. This is something that transcends words, everybody. This is going to affect each one of us in a way that no words can even come close to describing. But I'm going to highly encourage you to hold in mind and be open to being lifted up into a different place. Okay. And yeah, if you can do bare feet, great. But if it's a little too cold and bare feet are not real doable, well, then just do what you can. But I encourage you to go not on concrete, stand on the earth. Stand on the earth, be with this oil. And you will have an experience like you haven't had, and I can't tell you how long. That was my experience. So I just wanted to hit the pause button on Michael's presentation, because what we have here, we've never had something like this before, ever. So thanks, Michael, for letting me do just a little interrupt. And for those who are listening, not watching, con color is white fur. So, and that's in here as well. There you go. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, the evergreen essence, there's so much in there, and I think it really embodies the heart and spirit of both our Highland Flats and our Northern Lights farms, which the more you learn, they're just such accomplishments and gifts that keep on giving, and just sharing the bounty of the forest ecosystems where we live, in the form of aroma and volatile essential oils with all of you. It's so amazing. I love it. Here's some of our distillation down at St. Mary's. You'll see some Idaho Grand Fir on the left there, and emptying our chambers of wood chips after they're finished distilling. And if you look at the facility on the right there, you can see that St. Mary's was built for distilling herbs in the summer, in the fall, in the spring, when conditions are really nice. There's no way to heat that facility. It's open. It's a convertible distillery. It's beautiful, but it has challenges in the winter, which Gary quickly discovered, transporting all of that Idaho Grand Fir down to St. Mary's. If you didn't get it there in a timely fashion, it could freeze solid in the trailer, because this was all happening in the winter. And that's one of the large impetuses for constructing the Highland Flats distillery, where I'm sitting right now. After Gary started distilling the Idaho balsam fir, he built a logging camp up here outside of Naples in order to house members and employees for the harvest. And the thing that's important to keep in mind is that this harvest was occurring in the winter outside of your normal farming season. So most of your farmers are going to have a winter to regroup and rebalance, whereas Gary just added another 3 months of hard labor, harvesting and distilling, in order to make this product a reality for 15 years straight. And the more I think about that, the challenges over those 15 years, for every winter and every opportunity and every challenge, and overcoming all of that just to get these products, to keep them available, it's just it's a phenomenal thing to be a part of, and I feel really privileged. Here's some of the old Army tents when they were first put up. And you can see one of the semi trucks in the background with 2 trailers. And those trailers were originally intended for potatoes. So they had a small conveyor down the middle that would unload the material. but you still needed to crawl in there and pitchfork it down onto the conveyor belt. It was about an hour process just to unload those trailers after the 3 to 6+ hour trip through winter conditions down to St. Mary's.
So Michael, it was way more than an hour. We did it a lot, and the metal inside was at a slant because everything was at a slant, and then the sharp conveyor down the middle, and the conveyor of course had little, it was sharpened metal, and it was so slippery in there. The truck was not flat. The truck was like this inside. And so we had to stand in there and get, because the chips froze. So we had to shove the chips with pitchforks down onto the conveyors, and it would froze. The chips would get inside the conveyors because they're little, and the conveyors were meant for potatoes, so they're bigger, and they would jam up the conveyor. It literally would take mega hours out there, and we'd constantly be falling and slipping because it was like slick on that metal, the metal parts that was, inside. And yeah, it was way more than an hour.
Yes, down at St. Mary's after driving 6 hours. Fortunately, my experience with them has been in our distillery up here where it's nice and warm. So when we were using the trailers, it would take us about an hour to unload them. But again, another reason why Gary built our distillery with such a large receiving bay for the trailers so that they weren't outside in negative temperatures, trying to get them unloaded. In the background, you can see the size of the trees. And our entire farm was full of those trees, and they were planted every 6 feet on a 6-foot grid. And you can imagine once those trees get overgrown, the idea of managing them or dealing with them could be quite overwhelming. Here's some photos of Gary building our lovely Highland Flats camp. And he was involved in every part of the process. He was never much of a manager, always a doer and getter-doner. And in the lower left, you'll see him building our dining room. And he's also putting in some the cedar log post foundations for our entire camp. That was an extremely muddy April. And so what they had to do was take the bulldozer and hammer those cedar logs into the ground, and then just cut out a section in order to mount the flooring to. Definitely an adventure from beginning to right through to today. The drive to St. Mary's was long and dangerous, and is a large part of the reason that Gary started building the Highland Flats distillery. If you look at that picture on the left there, that is MacArthur Lake Road, the actual road that our farm is on. And right behind Gary, over his left shoulder, you'll see a really beautiful Engelmann spruce. And that's one of the species that went into the evergreen essence. That particular tree is in the front of Max and Karen Hopkins' property, which they purchased up here near the farm. And it's just a beautiful specimen of an Engelmann spruce. If you ever go up to the farm, you'll notice it because it stands out like a jewel on MacArthur Lake Road. So after that really, really long commute every day for 3 months, Gary said, hey, that's enough. It's time to build a distillery up at Highland Flats. Actually, I have a video here.
Is there sound on this video, Michael?
I'm sorry, Cherie, could you hear it?
No, we can't hear the sound, dear.
Okay. Sorry, that is my IT problem, and I'm not sure how to get the sound to, if it's not. if it's not showing up.
Nick, can you coach a little? Is there anything? There's a box to click when you share your screen for share the sound.
Okay. Oh, share sound. Okay, got it. Okay, let me know if you can hear it now.
Didn't hear you, Eldon. One more time.
Yeah, it's Cherie McGee. I'm ready. Dennis is behind you back there.
Okay, Shaggy McGee. Guys, this road is really, really icy. It's been like this since early November. Ice from the rain, and then we fight mud, and then we fight snow melt and ice again, and snowpack. And it's some of the worst 5 miles of the whole 125, other than the last 6 miles into the farm. Needless to say, this kind of trucking is what separates the men from the boys.
50 miles from the border of Canada in the dead of winter, Young Living founder Gary Young and a few dedicated distributors harvest balsam fir. Gary rescued hundreds of acres of balsam fir trees scheduled to be clear-cut and burned.
You know, I could be laying on the beach, you know, sipping an orange juice, but I'll tell you something. For me, there's not one fraction of the satisfaction of that as there is in bringing these oils to the distributors. That's why I do this, because that's where the rewards are.
Nice video of you know, just showing part of the process and everything that it takes to get this tree material into an essential oil bottle. And the challenges. Here's some of our harvesting up here at Highland Flats, and we still use the chipper on the right that you see. It can take entire trees and it chips them via a drum that has blades on it, and all of those chips get basically shot into the trailer. The trees are fed with our mini excavator on the left, and all of that equipment we still have in use. The semi truck there is down at St. Mary's right now. And you'll see that our equipment has evolved quite a bit, and the process has changed, our efficiency has improved, but the purity and the quality of the oil and the product is the same as it was the first day that it was distilled here, which is a really nice thing to stand behind, in that our oil is completely pure. We use all stainless steel, food grade stainless steel and glass. And that's all the essential oil ever touches. And Gary was adamant that no lesser quality materials were ever used in order to maintain the purity and the essence of that essential oil. Now, if you can take a minute and imagine 15 years of transporting those trees down to St. Mary's 3 months out of the year, when you'd rather be doing well, there's a lot of things to do in the winter, as rewarding as it is. That's when he began construction on our Highland Flats distillery. And this is inserting one of our stainless steel extraction chambers via the forklift. Gary's in the forklift there. So after 15 years, our distillery came on the first week of January 2014. And we've been distilling essential oil ever since. It was, I consider it pretty perfect timing, because Young Living experienced a tremendous amount of growth, and there's just no way that St. Mary's could have handled the production in any way. So we've been able to increase our production. Our crew has grown, our equipment has grown, our experience has grown, all with the goal of keeping up with you all and your sharing of these products. So some of the first oil distilled here at Highland Flats. And Gary's just taking it in from our cooker number 4. And you can imagine the relief of that moment, changing that commute from 5 hours to just 5 minutes. And it was a huge, huge victory and accomplishment. And it keeps, you know, it's a gift that keeps on giving every day. I was just distilling Grand Fir oil this morning, and this place, once it came alive, it's been nonstop, and truly a gift, and such an amazing thing to be a part of. In the background, you can see that mixing unit that I was telling you about. So right behind the separator on the right, that is the mixing unit that all of our evergreen essence was blended in this year. In that picture, it's in the basement, and I'm not exactly sure how they got it out of the basement, but somehow somebody got it out of there, because when you get here, you'll see it's pretty challenging to get large vessels out of this space. Kind of a victorious moment in time with the Young Living crew, and you can see in the background on the left, there's still insulation on the walls. The walls of our distillery are not even complete. In the lower left, there's a cap and some steam distribution piping for our condensers, and everything was still a work in progress at this time. And we've come so far since this moment, but it was just such a huge achievement, and it you know, really captures that all of the struggle and challenges that went into getting this place off of the ground and solving that long commute, logistical challenges. The potato trailers were amazing and served us well for over 15 years. And this picture captures one of our upgrades. We use what's called a walking floor trailer. So there are slots on the bottom of the trailer that actually shift, and the entire trailer unloads without us having to jump in there and pitchfork every bit of it. You can see Gary and Mary taking in the production, and our logging harvest operations manager, Todd, in the lower left there. At this point, he was our mechanic, but Gary appreciated his skills and potential so much, he put him over all of our logging. Just a really, really amazing moment there. The best way to experience our farm is via one of our member events. Here you can see some of our winter harvest, and members from all over the world get to reserve a week and come up and experience every part of our seed to seal process. And once you come up and get to know the team here that's producing the oil, walk through the entire process, and go home with your own bottle of oil, it really changes forever how you use these oils and how you relate to the Highland Flats and Grand Fir and all of the products that our oils are in. So I highly recommend, if you haven't made it out, I know a lot of you have, because Cherie is #1 at bringing people out to the farms, because once you do it, there's no there's no comparison. Some more pictures from member events. Also, during the winter harvest, we're able to do some small scale distilling. So members usually get to leave with an exotic oil that's never really produced in a single. It's one of the privileges if you've ever wanted to experience a once opportunity oil, then winter harvest is definitely your opportunity to distill it yourself and take home a bottle. This was in January of 2020. We had a Japanese rewards retreat, and about 120 Japanese members came to experience a week of winter harvest in about 5 hours. So we shuffled them around from station to station, and it was just a really amazing opportunity. But you can see that all of the members that come and visit this farm feed the spirit of this farm with their intention and with their passion and everything that they do. And you can really feel that as soon as you step into the farm. It's hard to describe. It's really something that you just need to experience. When I first started at Young Living, that was the end of 2014, and Highland Flats we were only in our second year of production, so it was still very much new and still working out a lot of kinks. During that winter harvest, Gary would actually fly up from Utah once or twice a week for every week of that winter harvest, and it was after signing on and not knowing anything about this company or essential oils. It was a unforgettable experience when you have the owner of the company. You don't know when he's going to show up. He's got his own plane. He's going to be flying 20 minutes away from the farm. And so we would just keep an eye on the computer and see when he was taking off so that we could have the harvest equipment ready for him to go to work and start harvesting these trees, because we were harvesting quite a lot during the winter months. We were still only distilling during the winter at this time. So we were doing 24-hour shifts. We had one crew working at night and another crew working in the daytime. There in the middle, you can see our feller buncher, and that tree, that piece of equipment, you'll see it takes down our trees. I've got a video of it to share. And that was Gary's first feller buncher purchase. It was a used machine that came down from Canada, and he got an extremely good deal on it. And fortunately, we have Todd, who's an amazing mechanic, who's probably replaced every part of that machine. But we're still using it every year, and it's another gift that keeps on giving. But Gary really enjoyed operating that and harvesting our fir trees, and we would have it gassed and ready to go for whenever his plane might land. This is one of our first projects up here. It was called the Buffalo Field because the owner had a herd of buffalo that they wanted to graze in here. And if you look at this aerial image, you could see that in the very back is what the entire field looked like. And we worked our way through clearing one section, partially clearing another section. And Cherie would probably know how many years it took to get through this, but I know that it took at least 3 years that I've been here.
Yeah, and we were working on it for way before that. So it definitely takes time. Equipment was breaking down. We did not have any tents. We had no shelter, nothing. The bathrooms were you go find a tree somewhere away from everybody else. It was a brisk experience, to say the least, because all this happened in the sleet and the snow and the ice, and equipment doesn't run well for long periods of time in that. So there's just lots and lots of issues, but this is a beautiful picture it took to get us to this point.
One of the other issues that we face is in the springtime. Between winter and summer, our roads get really soft. So the county closes them and we're not able to transport heavy loads. And that period will last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. And we were still harvesting this particular patch when we got notice that the roads were going to close. And Gary was up here, and that was my only 24-hour shift, but an unforgettable experience. We filled our distillery almost to the roof. We filled every trailer we had with as much wood chip material as we could get. because the roads were going to close, and Gary did not want those products to go out of stock, our deep relief and our Idaho balsam fir. So we worked all through the night harvesting as much material as we could. And it actually took us over a month to distill all of that material that we harvested that night. It was a pretty amazing experience and something I'll never forget. But you could see Gary just working all night, and we were right there, you know, supporting him. It was amazing. After our harvest, we plant anywhere from 50 to 100,000 trees every spring. This year, we also started planting them in the fall. So we planted just a few thousand transplants this fall. And that's the same field on the left, Pamela Hunter and Gary driving a stake. And then that picture on the right is 5 to 7 years later. So
Michael, one of the things I want everybody to see is the cover crop. And so as Michael gets into his presentation, you can see the cover crop that is supporting our whole world. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle. So I just want everybody to notice that we have our beautiful trees, but what's equally as important is the cover of the soil, which is right next to the trees and all around the trees.
Yep, we have over 30 different species of cover crops between the trees. And I'll get into a little bit of the practice of that here in a moment. But the main goal is just not to have any bare ground. That's what we're working toward. If your ground is covered in plants, you're on the right path. Here you can see we are transplanting some of our white fir. And on the right is one of our nursery plantings. And we plant them pretty close together, about 1 foot to 2 feet apart. And that allows us to give them more nutrients and attention until they get a bit more established. And then in the left, you can see that we're actually transplanting them out into the field 6 feet apart. And that field has about 1,000 tons of wood chips added to it, because we have a nice supply of wood chips that are going to mulch down and feed that soil and feed those trees moving forward. It's not all labor and production. During our events, we do spend a day out on the river. Not during winter harvest, but spring planting and our summer activities. We get to go out on the Moye, and it'll just give you another appreciation and perspective on this amazing place that's North Idaho. In the middle here, you can see the feller buncher that Gary purchased. On the right is how we used to harvest trees, and that was a smaller skid steer with shears. But as our operation grew, as our production grew, demand grew, we've upgraded quite significantly. Here's a video of harvesting trees. Now he's going to cut it and he's going to lay it down. But there's also a lot of logistics involved in setting up this project so to efficiently get the trees from where they're harvested to the chipper, to the distillery, and have all of that equipment working in unison and everyone working as a team. So here's feller buncher harvesting one of our trees. If you've ever driven on ice, you know how nerve-wracking it can be. And if you just picture driving on ice, only you're in a 60,000 pound machine, it's even more unnerving. But fortunately, Todd has years and years of experience. And this feller buncher here, we ordered specifically for our operations because it has a very narrow track. There were only 2 of these machines in the country, and it allows us to go into our forest harvest operations, and we can get in there and only get the trees that we want to harvest and leave everything else pristine. One of the benefits of our harvest operations, traditionally logging is going to leave a bunch of huge piles to be burned. That earlier picture of our farm was showing some burn piles on a neighboring property. But when we get finished, we use all of the parts of the tree, all of the branches, and the property looks like a park when we're finished. And so it's really, we're kind of the future of logging in that way, because we don't waste anything. Everything gets reused and fed back into the soil. Here's one of our skidders, and this is a piece of equipment that we use to transport our trees to the chipping site. We use that mainly in the winter because the trees can be dragged across the ice without any problem. We don't lose any material, but it's a really efficient machine for getting the trees to the landing. And then if we're doing a logging operation, we have our processor. The processor is going to take off all of those branches, and it also has a chainsaw that will cut exactly a 16-foot log. So in the background, you can see some logs, and those are going to the lumber mill because most of our essential oil is in the needles and the branches. So when we have a large logging operations, we will send the logs to the lumber mill and distill everything else. Here's loading some of the logs into the log truck.
Michael, we have really, really come a long ways from how we started, y'all. Before, we used to have that tiny little skid steer is all we had. And we would load, we would cut with that, we'd load with that. When that was down, a bunch of us would actually carry the dang trees over to the chipper. So, wow, this is so different from how we started. We're really getting advanced.
And even in my time here, we were using chainsaws before we got that processor. And it would take us multiple days to get a load of trees. But as you can see, that processor is significantly more efficient than even myself with a chainsaw on my best day. Yeah, everything's come a long way. And Cherie, you should also mention that when you were harvesting with the skid steer, members were doing a lot of that harvesting. So here's a nice time-lapse video of a full harvest operation. I'll just let it play.
What were they watching there? What was happening there?
So at the very end, we were spreading our leftover wood chip material after we've distilled it back onto the fields. And for that particular shot, and all of our wood chip material gets incorporated back into the soil and just breaks down and improves our ability and capacity to grow trees and grow healthy trees.
So it nourishes a richer topsoil? Is that what it's doing, or what's it doing?
Yes, it's providing food and water holding capacity to all of the life that's in that soil. So we're able to hold a lot more water and support a lot more biodiversity in the microbiome of that first 6 inches of topsoil.
Powerful.
Our seed to seal distillation process. We've upgraded our boiler to steam generators, but other than that, this is a complete representation from distillation to condensing and separating and collecting our plant material. Our distillation starts with pure water that we get from a local Cabinet Mountains utility, and it is the natural pure water from our Cabinet Mountains up here in Idaho. We add energy in the form of heat to that water in order to convert it into steam. The steam has a tremendous amount of energy. If you'll see the horizontal line near the top of this graph, that's how much energy you need to put into water just to get it into a steam state. And all of that energy we're basically using to carry our essential oils and put them into a vapor form so that we can condense them back into a liquid and collect them. We stomp the wood chips in order to make sure that steam comes into contact with as much of the surface material as possible. So we don't want the steam to go through a loose pocket of material and escape without picking up essential oil from all of the plant material. Blue spruce essential oil on the left is a brilliant pink. And Cherie was there for the first time blue spruce was ever distilled, and you wouldn't expect a pink oil, but it is a brilliant pink.
It also has little gold flecks in it. It's the most amazing, it's astonishing to look at. It's like a pink tourmaline color with little, Gary always called it his pink champagne oil, but it's like literally pink tourmaline, but it literally has little tiny light refracting particles in it that literally put off a gold shimmer. It is truly the most amazing experience I've ever had in distillation. I was the first one to watch the very first distillation come across and rise up. So I'm like, what did we put? I thought we were doing blue spruce, and I ran upstairs to make sure, came back down. This is in St. Mary's. And I'm like, and there was everybody else. It was really late at night and it was really cold. And everybody else was finally up getting some food. And I stayed down at the distillery to watch everything. And I ran up, and there's just like a couple of our wonderful Hispanic workers there, and they didn't speak English very well. And I'm like, blue spruce, like a C. And I fly back downstairs, and I'm like, this is pink. And so then I asked him to go get Senior Gary. And then Gary came down. He goes, Cherie, I thought we were doing blue spruce. I go, it is blue spruce, Gary. He goes, it's pink. I go, I know. It was quite a remarkable experience to see this. It has light in it. And this is, if you could see this oil, it literally carries its own light. It is amazing. Even in a dark distillery where the lights are way dim, this oil has a brilliance and light to it. So you can actually see the live light energy, the energy of the spirit of the tree, the spirit and the essence of life itself coming through light in this oil. It's absolutely astonishing.
On the right, you can see some of our grand fir being distilled, and it is more of a green, golden green on average. But that's two of our separator units there, and the oil just floats on top of the water because it's less dense. It makes it really easy for us to collect it and separate it. And that's why we call them separators, because the oil and water just naturally separate. Here we've got a picture loading some of our stainless barrels of oil onto a truck bound for Utah after we filter. And I didn't get into the testing, but every time we do a distillation, we send a test up to a lab. And we have a lab on site. We have a lab manager, Sabrina, and she does what's called a gas chromatography analysis of every distillation we do. So every distillation that Highland Flats has done since 2014, we have records of it, and we know exactly how the constituents can shift and change via seasons, growing conditions, and we can use that information to improve our product, improve our performance, and just aim for the highest quality essential oil that we possibly can. Now we'll get into a little bit of a discussion about agriculture, which I'm really passionate about. Cherie was going into the Kiss the Ground documentary, and it's a really amazing field to be a part of right now, because it seems like after so many years of mismanagement, we finally have figured out the proper direction to go, and the potential is really amazing.
So, Michael, one of the things that was shared in the documentary is since the 1970s, 1/3 of our whole Earth's topsoil has disappeared since the 1970s. So like in the 60s and before, we had 1/3 more. So we have 1/3 less now. And when I know to have many conversations with Gary, this is huge. Y'all, and when Michael gets a little further in, I will share with you, what does this mean to your families? What does this mean for our oil? What does it mean for the health of your body? What does it mean for your family's future? And how it can connect. But I want you to think about that. Gary was very aware of this, and he was literally a pioneer way before his time on so many things, one of which was this whole concept of what Michael's going to get into, which is Michael's passion, which is the no-till cover crop. And please, what he said is we have 30 different species of cover crops. Y'all, that is massive. That is like the best, highest organic nutritional supplement for our soil. It is like, and that's what Young Living is doing. And so hang tight. This part, if it gets too technical, just hang. I'll bring it on home for y'all, I promise. So there we go.
I'll keep it as elementary as I can. It's a fascinating topic, but as Cherie was saying, we've lost a tremendous amount of topsoil, and literally the only reason for that is mismanagement. Doing agricultural practices that are harmful and not beneficial. Our biggest export is topsoil, and it just gets flushed down the rivers because there's not enough life in the soil to hold it together. It just gets washed away. It's really, really tragic and a huge waste once you realize the value of that topsoil. So does the soil keep the plants from blowing away, or do the plants keep the soil from blowing away? Back in the Dust Bowl, a lot of farmers realized and then quickly forgot that without plants, you have no soil there. It is subject to the whims of nature, of wind, of water, can get washed away, blown away. And part of the creation of the Dust Bowl, beyond drought, was just tillage practices that basically exposed all of that soil to the sun, to the elements, and there's nothing to keep it in place. Part of regenerative agriculture is just acknowledging that the entire system of soil is alive, and all of the life in there contributes to the health of our trees, the productivity of our system, and it all works together. If you see a field of trees, the first impression might be that a tree is an island unto itself. But the only reason that it can exist and thrive in that situation is because it has relationships with all of this bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, a whole host of a civilization under the ground that is bringing that tree nutrients in exchange for sugar. Because the tree is kind of the solar panel that converts sunlight into sugar for all of these organisms in the soil. And in exchange, those organisms provide the tree with water, with nutrients, and sometimes with protection. It's a pretty amazing system. A decent percentage of all of the photosynthesis that a plant produces will strictly be used to feed that life in the soil. So you think that all of the energy that they make will just go into growth, but it's actually not true. Anywhere from 15 to 20% or more of the energy a plant produces, they will put directly into the soil. And that's in order to feed those communities of microorganisms that they're in relation with.
That process is called the drawdown process. And then with the carbon as well. So it's the combination of the nutrients and the carbon. And that process is called the drawdown.
On the right here, you can see a regeneratively managed farm parcel, and on the left, a mismanaged system. So there's a tremendous amount of exposed dirt. That sun is baking that dirt, killing all of that life, and the carbon is off-gassing in the process. So whatever life was in that soil gets radiated out of the soil. But by getting that ground covered in plants, healthy plants that are growing, and having it covered year-round, we can increase the soil organic matter of our fields. And if we increase them by 1% per acre, we can store an additional 25,000 gallons of water. And the effects of that are, they can be felt all around, but the water cycle is really huge. And I kind of compare it to a sponge or a piece of paper. On the left, that neglected farm is going to be like a piece of paper. So you could get 10 inches of rain, but it doesn't matter because that farm is only going to absorb a 1/4 inch, and 9+ inches are just going to run down the creek, carrying all of that topsoil. Whereas on the right, properly managed, that topsoil is more like a sponge and it can absorb all of that water, and you're not going to lose all of that topsoil. So from a conventional chemical agricultural perspective, on the left, we're just going to dump on chemicals. The topsoil is not really that important. But on the right, everything is important. We're going to nurture it, and we're not going to lose any topsoil. When I describe soil biology to young living members, I just draw an analogy to the structure of network marketing. Because just in biological systems, there's a whole bunch of relationships and production, just like in an organization that you would build. And all of that productivity works toward the old growth forest, which has so much life in the soil that it's capable of a tremendous amount of production for that system. The problem with agriculture is conventional till agriculture is that you make some progress building up a soil community, and then you're going to till it and go all the way back to stage one, which is really, really counterproductive. If we're able to increase the soil organic matter across Highland Flats by just 1%, we can store as much water as flows over Niagara Falls in about 30 seconds. And that's really only by increasing our soil organic matter from 4% to 5%. And so you can imagine what could be done on a much larger scale and how that can affect the climate and the water cycle and basically the resilience of our climate events. On the left, we switched to no-till in 2016. So prior to that, we were practicing organic agriculture, but for weed control, we were disking and tilling. And the field looks really nice and well manicured, but it's not nearly as productive as it could be. On the right, you'll see we have over 30 different species of cover crops between those trees. And the diversity of the cover crops is what produces resiliency in the system. If we only did one species of cover crop between the trees, you might get it completely covered, but each species interacts in a different way and brings another asset to the table. And only together with a whole bunch of diversity are you able to maximize the potential of the system.
Yeah, it's called optimal biodiversity. And because each different cover crop brings in a different nutrient, it brings in a different energy, it brings in a different life, it feeds a different part of the community of the soil. And it strengthens its culture to make it exceedingly resilient. So not only does it do that in the soil, but here's the key part that seems to be missed often, is that what happens in the soil affects what happens in the atmosphere. So by having the cover crops, we can positively affect our atmosphere so that we have the proper amount of rain, so that we don't have what's called the desertification, meaning we turn something into a desert because there is no rain, because the soil is void. So this way, when we have the richness of the biodiversity of all these different species of cover crops, they feed their nutrients in. In return, there's of course the carbon and all the other, the glucose and all the other aspects of the nutrients. That's down deep. But then what happens is it also goes up. And when it goes up, it has such a positive aspect in our environment. So Michael, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but this, do you understand that it is a symbiotic relationship? It is not it's not a maverick relationship where it's in and of itself. So what we are doing on our farms is dramatically positively affecting the atmosphere in the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say it better myself. What we're doing on the ground has direct impacts on what's happening over our head and in the surrounding communities. Global warming and climate change, two terms that are, they're in the mainstream a lot today. And part of cover cropping, a huge part is reducing soil temperatures. So when the sun is hitting that ground on the right there, the soil temperatures can get over 100 degrees. Whereas if you measure the soil temperatures on the left, they're going to be 20 to 30 degrees cooler sometimes, because all of that sunlight energy is reflected and absorbed by the plants. So just for climate change alone, if your ground is covered in growing plants, you're going to reduce atmospheric temperatures, and you're going to that's going to improve the water cycle. Without soil, there is only dirt, and that's a big tenet of regenerative agriculture. Is dirt is not alive. It's just a mix of minerals, and there's no life there. No carbon, no interactions, no production, no transfer of solar energy into physical carbon structure. So here are some of the practices: no-till, minimum tillage. We focus on soil biology as opposed to throwing chemistry in the form of synthetic amendments into the soil. The ground is covered year-round in growing plants and diverse cover crops. Now, the final tenet of regenerative agriculture is livestock, and we have some challenges here with livestock. And so once we solve those challenges, you'll see some livestock, but the trees present a definite challenge to integrating livestock into our system.
In Mona, we have livestock because they use, is it sheep that we're using to, I believe we're using sheep to, they only eat the weeds. They don't eat the lavender plants. They only eat the bad weeds, and that's the sheep. And then it's all about keeping poop in the loop. And so in the whole circle of how all this, everything affects each other, when you have animals eating really good organic matter, they of course poop out really good organic matter and fertilize. And I know we use chicken poop to fertilize the trees up in Highland Flats. And we've been doing this for a really long time. And what's interesting is, you know, when I was growing up, when I was very, very little, like before even getting into kindergarten, my grandpa was an organic farmer way before organic was cool. And he came over from Germany, and we had a small farm. We had cows, pigs, chickens. I mean, you name it, everything, sheep, everything. And we would have to clean up the poop of the animals, put it in the manure spreader, and then we literally would go sit in the back of the manure spreader, and Grandpa would drive the manure spreader. Sometimes he used a team of Percherons. Most of the time he did that when I was really little. So he would drive the team, and we would sit in the back of the manure spreader, us little kids sitting on the poop, and we would be flinging poop out into the field of the manure. So when I saw us using, the chicken poop and the other types of organic animal fertilizer that we have, I'm like, yeah, so good, so good. And so I just wanted to interject. In 1999 was my first convention. And I did not, of course you go on the tour, but then I'm like, you know what, they're supposed to tell us this. I want to go talk to the people who are working in the fields. I want to go talk to the welders. So I diverted from the tour when it was done and at Mona Farm, and I went out and I walked out and I went and talked. I call them the dirt doctors, and they get really mad at me because, Cherie, it's not dirt, it's living soil. But they would tell me, and this was in 1999 already, the extent that Gary had them go through to refurbish the soil. And they were passionate about this. So this has been a practice in Young Living for a really long time. And then Michael and all the farm managers have taken it up to the highest next level. So I truly hope y'all are understanding that this is part of our foundation. I know the term roots to wings is something we're going to see more of, but this has been our roots from the very beginning. And this is something that is so important that we get. So Michael, I didn't want to jump on you, but I think that it was really important that everyone understands that this is a part of who we are and who we always have been.
Yeah, thank you, Cherie. And each farm, as you were saying, Mona is incorporating sheep. Ecuador, Gary put in the we have an entire earthworm farm down there in order to cultivate that biology and put it out into the fields. And that was built years and years ago. And even back at St. Mary's, Gary was injecting enzymes and microbiology into the soil in order to cultivate it and improve the quality of the herbs that we grow.
And now we use some really powerful humus to replenish as well.
One thing that I wanted to mention is number 2, we say soil fertility is increased with a focus on soil biology. The chemical fertilizer, pesticide, herbicide industry, all of those chemicals are salts, and they're really effective salts, but what they do is they destroy the life in the soil. So that's one of the biggest problems with chemical agriculture, is that you may have a certain amount of biology in your soil, and you apply those cheap fertilizers or herbicides or pesticides, and it'll kill all of that life and set you back to the beginning in that sequence of biological systems. On the left, we have our mulch spreader, which can fit between the trees. And then on the right, you can see the field that we planted in concolor, and we're spreading out our entire chip pile onto that field. Another field of grand fir that we integrated a chip pile into. The organic matter, we took it from 4% to 12%, which was huge because each acre of that field is able to hold an additional 100,000 gallons of water. And that, as Cherie was saying, is going to affect the atmosphere and the climate and the water cycle. And it's just really huge what we can do with all of that byproduct of our distillation operations. That is a field of blue spruce right there. This was back in 2010, and you can see all of the grand fir trees there on the left. And now we can take a look at Highland Flats. This was probably 2 years ago. There's our distillery in the foreground, our new shop on the right. You can see all of our planted trees and some of the surrounding Selkirk mountains. And there's a field that we're spreading chips onto, a traditional logging operation in the back. And that stand of trees right there is part of the original stand of Christmas trees that Gary and Mary came upon that was being abandoned. So that's a little view of our beautiful farm here. And just want to thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all for all of the work that you do in sharing these products and giving them a destination, because all of us really appreciate it and we have a great time. So thank you.
Michael, I want to share a little bit about, so everybody understands the process. You know, people say sustainable farming. Well, if you want to get any of the people upset at the farms, don't use the word sustainable. It is about regenerative and renewable farming. And it is all about our planet. And one of the things that we're so powerful about, it's called biosequestration. And that is a key piece, because that is where actually we take the carbon and we store it in the soil. And then it goes down into the plants. But then what happens is then that part of that then feeds the microorganisms, and it creates such an environment and culture. The big word is culture, Young Living culture, this culture, that culture. Well, the soil needs a culture as well. And when you have a nutrient dense, nutrient rich culture in the soil, which is what we are creating by the biodiversity that is being created, what happens then is it goes into you deal with water. So you're able to hold and capture more water. But what is the quality of that water if there's toxic chemicals in the air? If we are using glyphosates like Roundup, for example, and other herbicides and pesticides, what happens is you literally, those dust particles are filled with those toxins because the soil turns to dust and now you have dead dirt. Well, then that floats around in the air. As the wind comes, it floats around in the air, and those particles float around in the air, and then you create a more toxic environment in the air. And that's a lot of what we are dealing with in a lot of places in our world. What Young Living said is enough is enough. No, we're not doing that. We never have done that. Gary has never been a part of that. And our amazing farm managers are in 100% alignment with that, not only that philosophy, but the practices. Because you can talk the talk, but walking the walk, that's the main piece right here. That's where it matters. That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And so what happens is, what you do then when you create this amazing culture of nutrient dense richness in the soil, you shift the atmosphere in the air. And when you shift the atmosphere in the air, you have healthier rainwater. You have healthier water coming down. And then you capture more of that water. So you create this amazing supportive cycle, where each piece continues to nurture and nourish the other pieces of the puzzle. And let's take it to the next step. So now we've affected the soil, the nutrient dense, we've affected the atmosphere, but let's talk about our communities. Because what happens is when you have death in the soil and it turns to dirt, you have no life. Life cannot sustain itself. And when life cannot sustain itself, people and animals can't live there. So you have this giant void of nothingness but dust and toxicity. That's what you have. When you bring in this whole cycle that Young Living has been from day one a part of, okay? And we are taking it to the next level and the next level and the next level. Other companies, they can't even touch us. We are decades beyond anybody, even if they started now. What is so powerful is our communities, because we create life wherever we go. We create life in the soil. We create life in the air, in the atmosphere. We create life in the communities, because what we have is regenerative and it is rebuilding, it's renewing. And so we have more jobs. We have healthier food. We have clearer thinking. We have more positive energy. And I'm not talking just energy like electrical energy, but I'm talking within us energy. And you have a whole better way of being, because our communities of what we're creating. And literally, I've heard in some of the farms in different places in the world, we have waiting lists for people to come work on our farms, because people want a part of what we are creating on our planet and in our world. Isn't that the coolest thing ever? To me, knowing this is where it just is like, if people only got this. This is what it's about. This is about creating a world, okay? Climate issues, it is a real thing that they can be a thing in the past. And every one of us can be a part of this solution. And Young Living is leading the way. I hope you all get that we have been from day one leading the way in this. And we will continue to pioneer and be the scouts in the front with our amazing scientists and our amazing research and our phenomenal farm workers. When you talk to these guys, every one of them gets this. It's in their DNA. They get this. They get how important this is. They get it. And they understand it. And they protect it. I hope y'all get that. I know I'm getting a little but it deserves, this process deserves to be okay? It does. So now let's take it to our oils. What does that mean for us? Think about when you eat food that's empty calories and nothing but basically, okay, fat. And I don't mean healthy fat. I mean like empty calories that turn to fat when we consume them. How do you think? How do you feel? How does your body work? Does your body rebuild itself or does it break down? When you eat those foods, okay, like microwave food or any type of food that isn't really food, what happens? What happens to us? Do we age faster? Do we have more issues? Do we have more illness, more disease? You know, alone. Every year on our planet, 3 pounds of toxic chemicals are sprayed for every living human being. Every year, 3 pounds of toxic chemicals are sprayed for every living being on our planet. And do you know there's over 200 peer-reviewed studies where these toxins are directly linked to cancer, autoimmune, other serious illnesses in children and adults. 200 peer-reviewed medical studies. Enough is enough. So not only do we have the option, and are we, Young Living has literally put the stake in the ground and said, no. As a large corporation, what we do matters. And not only are we going to stop it, we are going to lead the way in restoring it. We are going to lead the way in repairing it. We are leading the way. And the world will feel this and take notice because we will never stop like Gary. Like Michael said, Gary would outwork everyone. 24 hours keeping up with, everybody said, how do you keep up with Gary? Okay. He was on a mission and he had a mission that he would not be stopped from. Imagine that a whole group of us, see, Gary always said, the company, Young Living Company is not the buildings. It is not the buildings. It is our farms and it is our people. That is Young Living Company. It is our farms and it is our people. It is not those buildings. It is not the corporate offices. It is none of that. He has said that time and time again. What message are we sending to the world by our actions? Not just the talk and not just the fancy marketing spin and not just the pretty pictures on Instagram, which those are pretty, and not just the, what do you call those, infographics, not just any of that, but by our actions. What messages are we giving our world by our actions on how we're taking care of our planet, how we're taking care of our soil, our atmosphere, and our communities and each other? That who we are speaks so loudly that people cannot hear a word to the otherwise by our actions. And this is what this is about. And this is what lights me up and gets me so excited. Why? Because when you stay 30, 60, 90 days and you eat nothing but nutrient-rich foods and you get good sleep and you get good water, okay? And you get good exercise and you're outside and you get all of that. How do you feel? Have you ever done that in your life? If you haven't, oh my gosh, I highly encourage you to do that. When you take really good supplements like our supplements or their oils, how do you feel? How do you think? How are your emotions? How is your body? How is your energy? How are we? Okay? That's what happens with our soil. When we grow our plants and our trees in our soil and we take care of our soil, we have an optimal nutritional profile that nothing can touch. Nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing can touch that. Nothing created in a lab can come close to that. Nothing. And then because of our distillation, our harvesting and our distillation processes are so unique for each plant. Brett likes to call them herbs for each tree. They are so unique. Okay. They and Young Living, we extract the highest nutrient dense richness out of each plant within that process. Okay. And then those molecules are captured in our little bottles of oils. And then our body takes them in. And we are different because of it. We are different because of this. Your family will be different. What would happen if you never had one of those painful diagnoses that so many people are getting nowadays? What would happen? And not just people, animals. Because of our soil and the plants being toxic, chemicalized, there's more cancer in dogs than ever in the history of the world. And you know what? Dogs should not have cancer. I'm sorry. Okay. No one should. But dag nabbit, all right, do you hear me? This is what we're dealing with. We, you, me, we are Young Living. We are the company. We have the ability to change this, and we are changing it. And it starts with what Michael just presented to everybody. This is where it starts. Then we take it from here. Because what is in our little bottles has the ability to nurture and nourish us and lead us and guide us and direct us and support us in ways that transcends traditional scientific models, because they've never seen it before on this planet in a really long time. Imagine what it would be like. Imagine what that would be like, because that is what we have, because of the practices that our wonderful farms are doing, and because of what we have in these bottles. And now it's our responsibility to get that message out to the world by our actions. I got a little preachy, y'all, but do you get it? Do you get it? I'm serious. Do you get what we have? Do you get what we have? We have this. Does our world not need this? Yes, it does. Yes. And why did Gary choose the network marketing model? Well, we asked him that once late at night. Somebody asked him that after a Melissa harvest, really late at night. And y'all, it stays light till like 11 o'clock. At St. Mary's at night in the summer. So it was really late by the time we got in. And Gary just tipped back. He goes, well, that's easy. Because somebody said, you know, Gary, you could have been a billionaire many times over had you just sold these little bottles in a store. And Gary said, yeah, but it wouldn't have accomplished the mission of Young Living. And people got really quiet. And Gary said, the mission of Young Living was to bring you all back together again. The mission of Young Living was to help heal God's people and help them remember who they are at the core of their being and what truly, truly we are capable of. He goes, putting those bottles on the shelf, that wouldn't accomplish our mission. Our mission was to positively affect every being on this planet and help every family live a life of health and abundance. That is the mission of Young Living, and help every being remember where we come from and our truth and who we are, and more importantly, what we're capable of. Because there are no ceilings in Young Living, y'all. There are no ceilings in Young Living. So this is what we're about. And I hope everybody got that. I hope you all understand. And can you connect the dots from what Michael shared to what's in our bottle, how it's going to affect us, and how it can positively affect our families? Imagine what it would be like to have a child that can focus all the time. Imagine what it would be like to have one of our elders be able to move and jump and be free to have every part of their body work. Imagine what it would be like to have such clear creative thinking and intuitive capacity that we can create things that confound our current humanity. Can you all imagine that? Because of what we're doing, that is a reality for us. It's not just words, y'all. We live it every day. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what I just said? Imagine that. Our responsibility to bring that to our world. And we start with our own families. And then we start by just sharing with one person, one family at a time, something that could help them move the needle a little bit forward in their life so that their life is a little bit better. And then when they're there, then they have the opportunity to think, okay, now maybe I can move a little bit better again and a little bit better again, because that is the shifting that we're doing, all starting with our amazing soil and our heirloom seeds that we have, which we didn't even talk about in this time, but we'll talk about another time, because we also collect our own heirloom seeds. So I hope, I truly, truly hope that y'all got value today. Michael, thank you from my whole heart. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for working those long hours and just every little aspect. And y'all, Michael didn't tell you, but he does a lot of school. Michael does immense research on this. He takes seminars, he goes to conferences. Michael is as passionate as what I just like, he toned it down for y'all here on this presentation. He is crazy passionate about what we're doing with our soil, our atmosphere, our communities, and how that's affecting these little bottles, and then how that takes us to a higher level. So thank you, everyone. I hope this lit you up and fed you in a way today that you needed to be fed. Thank you. No one has what we have. And we're very blessed to have it. And we're just going to keep growing from here. Michael, any final words you want to say?
Oh, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, and thank you for everything you do to enjoy these products and get benefit from them. And as much work as it is, it's really, really, really enjoyable. And it brings a lot of joy and fulfillment to me and our whole team up here. So just want to say thank you all very much.
So remember, make it as easy as possible for someone to be a part of Young Living. Make it as simple as possible for somebody to share what we have in Young Living. We have a world that needs us. Together, we are powerful beyond measure. And together, we are making a positive impact on our world while leaving a very light footprint and creating a better place for all. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.